Welcome to the With You Rugby Podcast, designed to give you an in-depth look at the United States Rugby Foundation, including our grant programs and recipients, fundraisers, events, and much more. Now let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Vizard, President of the United States Rugby Foundation, and with our 2022 U.S. Rugby Hall of Fame induction ceremony presented by the Rugby Town National Training Center in the books, we thought you'd get to know this year's Hall of Fame inductees and special award recipients just a little bit better. And today we welcome in three-time Rugby World Cup performer and a 1991 Rugby World Cup champion and a 2022 U.S. Rugby Hall of Fame inductee, Maryanne M.A. Sorensen. Welcome, M.A. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks, Brian. How are you?
I'm good. So where are we talking to you from? Where are you calling? What's that background?
I'm in a spare bedroom in my home. It's where my nieces and nephews used to come when they visited Philadelphia. They would stay overnight, have some bunk beds over there, pull-out couch and stuff.
And I know you have the day off today, so thank you for spending the time with us. A little warm in Philadelphia, is that what I hear?
Oh, yeah, it's very warm. It's 96 degrees and probably 90% humidity. And my Alexa keeps telling me there's heat index warnings for today and heat advisories till 9 p.m. tonight. So.
Oh, wow, that's a long time. All right. So, as we do with all of our special award recipients and Hall of Fame inductees, we get to know them a little bit better. So tell us about your upbringing, where you grew up, and some of the sports you played as a kid.
Well, my dad was a doctor in the Army, so I was born in Texas, San Antonio, and then he moved to, he was at Walter Reed for a little bit, and then we moved to Pennsylvania, where he was at Valley Forge. So I think I was there till first or second grade. Then we moved down to this Jersey coast, Wildwood Crest, New Jersey, right above Cape May. And my dad left the Army and started a private practice. So I didn't play too many organized sports back then. I have 6 brothers and 1 sister, so we sort of played among ourselves a lot. So I think that's where I learned to get a great pain tolerance with 6 brothers. In high school, I went to a small Catholic school. I think in my graduating class, we had 93 students, males and females. So there weren't too many organized sports for women back then. I think we just had basketball and field hockey, neither of which I played. But I was on the CYO swim team, which if you've ever done any CYO sports, it's kind of not very organized. And I rode horses and I sailed a lot in the summer. And I just remembered I was in a bowling league with a couple of friends from high school. So that was not very active, but that was about it.
And how did you get involved with rugby?
Well, when I went to college, my freshman dorm was sort of near the cafeteria, and the rugby pitch was in the field behind William and Mary Hall, which was near the cafeteria. So we'd walk past there every day, and the guys would be practicing, and I thought, that looks like a lot of fun. And when I was growing up, I sometimes would play in the yard with one of my brothers, would have friends come over and we play touch football. So I kind of played that a little bit. It wasn't very good, but the rugby looked really interesting. And then I found out a couple of the law students and graduate students put a poster up and they were going to start a women's team. So my roommate and I immediately signed up some of our friends, and that's how we got on the team. So it was a lot of fun.
Well, you're part of the first ever women's team at William and Mary. What were those first years like, and do you remember any of the challenges your team faced in those early years?
Oh, I remember the first problem we had was trying to find jerseys. So I don't know if you know Matt Godak.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. So our school colors were green and gold, but we had to get jerseys quick. So we got gray jerseys with a red stripe across the chest. And I don't think we all could afford rugby shorts. So some of us were wearing jean shorts for our first year or so. And the first game we played, I believe we went to, it was in North Carolina. We played Reedy Creek. And I think we'd only practiced for maybe 2 weeks before that match. And I just remember not knowing what the heck was going on. And we're doing lineouts, and it was so much fun. But at the same time, I just remember feeling very confused. The other issue we had was trying to find people who had cars so we could travel to games. And then when we had tournaments, trying to cram 10 or 12 people into a hotel room without anybody noticing.
Oh, sure, right.
Yeah.
I think we've all been through those days.
Yeah. Well, not much sleep.
Right. Hey, Emma, after you graduated from William and Mary, you started to play for the Philadelphia Women's RFC in 1978. Why Philadelphia? It's your hometown, right? Always in Philly?
Well, no, I grew up, my parents were both from the Philadelphia area. My dad went to Jefferson Medical College. My older brother, who also went to William and Mary, went to medical school, and he went to Johns Hopkins. And he told me that well, if I go to medical school, I better go to Jefferson because Dad will be really upset if you don't, because he didn't go. So that's what I did. I went to Jefferson, and I had looked. Remember, we used to get the Rugby magazine, and it always had lists of the teams and stuff. So I had contacted Angie Clark, who was a contact for Philadelphia Women, and I said, I'm going to be moving to Philadelphia, and I'd like to play rugby. And so I got the information from her, and that's where I started playing with Philly.
And you had a lot of success with the team. Tell us about some of those accomplishments with the Philadelphia Women's RFC.
Well, like any team, we did have our ups and downs. But I remember, I think it was 1981, we were invited to nationals. I think we finished in the top 8, probably 8th. And it was the first time I'd ever been to a tournament of that nature, like that was so well organized. I think we played in Chicago at Oak Brook Park, which was like, the fields were like gorgeous. I think it was near a golf course or something. And we had really great referees, and everything went off on time, and it was just so well organized. That was my first time seeing lots of teams from across the country that I had read about different teams and never got to see them. Then later, I believe it was 97 and 98, we got to go to nationals again, because I think we were the second place team in Marfu. So we went, I think there were 2 divisions. There was the Cup division and the Plate division. So we played in the Plate division, and we had some pretty good success there. So
okay. And throughout those early years, you're also going to medical school and completing internships and fellowships. How tough was that, playing rugby and going through school and doing all those things?
Well, they were both sort of tough, but in different ways. Like in medical school, I was done class by a certain time. So it was easy to get to practice time-wise, but it was trying to find a ride there or get the train there. Plus, I didn't have much money. So sometimes I would take a train to a certain spot, and one of my teammates would pick me up, and then I could go to her house till practice started and study at her house. I also would once in a while go to practice with the Jefferson and Temple had a combined medical school team, and they played on Wednesday afternoons, and I could walk to that practice. But the Philly women practiced on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The other thing was trying to get to games sometimes from when I was in medical school, not having enough money because sometimes we had to fly. So that was a little bit rough. I had to ask my parents to borrow money. As a resident, it was hard in that my hours were unpredictable. So trying to get to practice, I would be stressed or start to get stressed around 3 o'clock. Am I going to be able to get out of here in time to get to practice? And most times I did. I did make a little bit of money, so that was a little bit easier. The other part was the call night. So I tried to trade my calls so I would not be on call the night of practice, or not be on call when there was a game, or not be on call when there was a better game. I had to make trades sometimes. And sometimes I made trades for things that were a lot less favorable, like being on call every other night. When I was a pediatrics resident, you would work 24 hours and you stay there overnight, and then you worked again the next day. So when I did those kind of trades and then would go to practice, I was sort of a little bit of a zombie for a while. But I think I don't know how I did it, because I'm so tired all the time now. But back then it was just I had more energy, I guess. And I actually, if someone drove me somewhere, I would just sit in the car and fall asleep. I could fall asleep a lot better than I can now.
Sure. Now, you also played for a team called the McGuires. Where was that team based out of? And is there a tale or two from the time with the McGuires you can share with us?
Mollies were based in Bethlehem. They were a really great team. They have a lot of good athletes up there. And of course, it's where Emil Cygnus, the Emperor of Sevens, is from. So he used to help us sometimes when we're playing sevens. He would come to our practices. They were a really, really fun team to play with. And I went to a lot of sevens tournaments with them. In the years I played with them in the summer, we went to Rockaway. We went to the Magnificent Sevens in Toronto one year. Most of the team, I think only 8 of us went. seven of them went into Winnebago with a coach whose name was Janice at the time. And I couldn't get out of work in time on Friday because I think they left on a Friday morning. So I had to work. So I flew up Friday night and met them. And we wound up in the finals. But the Saturday night, the coach, for some reason, would not let us eat dinner and just took off. And we were so angry the next morning. I remember our captain, MB Spurk, was saying, here we are, the hungry team, and is on the field for two games, like the semifinals and the finals. But during the finals, we were supposed to play 10-minute halves, and the referee called it short, only let us play 7 minutes. Everybody was sort of angry about that. And then the fans started yelling stuff at us. It was just got sort of bizarre. And I don't know if it's because we were so hungry, but I look back on it now, it seems funny. But at the time, it was rather disturbing.
Right. So your play on the field earned you selections to Marfu and Eastern Rugby Union select sides. Now, I know how much I enjoyed the ITTs when I was playing back then. Was the ITT similar for the women? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, yeah. It's really great for the women. I remember the first one I went to in New Orleans. I was rather timid and scared, and then felt like maybe I didn't belong. I didn't know anybody, but I went home at lunchtime and called my husband at the time and said, expressed my concerns. And he said, oh, just shut up and go play rugby. Do what you know how to do and have fun. And so that's what I did, and really enjoyed it. And then year after year when we would come back, it was great to see people that you knew from across the country. You don't get to see them, but that one time a year. And when you had that break from the end of your season till, I know on the East Coast, we would have a break. And then when ITTs they used to be in February, we'd have like a month or two, like you train at home. Then when you got back out to play, everybody was like wild. And I remember one time, the Type 5, we were all like tackling each other and just acting like, we had all this energy. And somebody said, oh, geez, the Type 5 hasn't been outside for a while. Having so much fun seeing each other and just getting back into the game situations.
Yeah, I always thought that was the best weekend in rugby. I love the ITTs.
Oh, yeah. And the competition was always so tough, and it was just so well played. And that was my favorite time of year, actually.
Yeah. Now, you were selected for the Eagles for the first time in 1990. Was that a result of a trials competition? How did you receive the news that you made the Eagle squad?
That was after ITTs in 1990. They were in Long Beach, California. And that was really tough ITTs for me because we only had 3 props and only 1 tight head. So I had to play all 3 games. And I got pretty well beat up there. But I don't know if they made selections at the venue and let us know. But I remember getting a mailing at home. Everything was done by mail then, and a phone call.
Sure.
Jamie Jordan, I think, would send the emails, would send the mailing lists out. She was the women's representative at the USA Rugby level. And I believe Elaine Raschuti, who lives in Philadelphia, was the convener of selectors. So she may have called me as well with the good news.
Okay. Now, soon after you made the Eagles, the first ever Women's Rugby World Cup takes place in the UK. What was it like to be part of history, being chosen to represent the first U.S. women's team at that World Cup?
It's something I can't even really explain. It meant so much to me. And then just going and meeting all the other players, we were all so excited. We met in the airport, I guess, in Cardiff, and we were all together and then went in vans to the hotel. And it was just the best feeling in the world, just to know that you were good enough to represent your country and that people were rooting for us back home.
Now, so you make the team, and if I'm not mistaken, though, there wasn't much funding for the team back then. What were some of the challenges your team faced going to that first Rugby World Cup?
Well, I don't know that we had any funding, actually. We all had to pay our own flight. We had to pay for a hotel stay. We had to buy our number 1s. I think we got them from, we had to get these skirts from Land's End, and a button-up sweater that a lot of us still all have with the old USA Rugby logo on it. We did get, kit was donated, our playing kit was donated. And, when you think about it, you have to pay for your own hotel. You also have to pay for food. I found out one of the players who didn't have that much money had kept a hunk of cheese on her windowsill outside her room and would just take bread from the breakfast room and
Oh
say,
my
eat that
gosh.
for snacks. So,
Really?
yeah, so
Wow.
I was horrified to hear that. Um, so that was probably the worst part. And for some people getting the time off from work. So that was hard. I almost was not able to get the vacation time. Other people had to take time, had to take unpaid time from work. So, that was another expense.
Well, despite all that, your team was victorious in that first Women's Rugby World Cup. Did you know before you left for that tournament that the Eagles were going to be, a contender for the title?
Well, I try not to think about that because I had the feeling like I had confidence in a lot of the players because I knew a lot of us have been playing for a long time. And I think we were one of the first countries in the world to have women's rugby. I think all the other major rugby playing nations started a couple of years after us. But I tried not to think too much about being a contender, just hoping that we would, and just knowing, I had so much confidence in all of my teammates, and just thought it would all play out on the field.
Now, was there a point in that final when you knew that you were going to win the championship?
Well, we all dug in really deep because I think, as I recall, England scored first because they had a penalty try against us. We had a 5-meter scrum defending and lasted forever. England just kept the pressure on. And then as the ball came back, somebody from our side stuck their hand in and touched it. So England got a penalty try and then got the subsequent kick. Tries were only 4 points back then. So I remember the score being 6-0, but we just never gave up. And then it just seemed like the rest of the game went our way. I had a few penalties called against me at one point during the game. The referee was at one point threatened that he was going to throw me out of the game. And I was like, what? Said I had entered the ruck from the wrong side, which I don't really remember doing. But anyway, after that, it all seemed to go our way. We had the great backs, and everybody just kept on pushing, and our scrum came together and performed really well.
Well, I also learned recently that your medical training came in handy at that 91 World Cup when you came to the aid of a fallen teammate who was injured, but not on the rugby field. Can you share that story with us?
Oh, I think that was perhaps one of the lots from hell.
Okay.
Had sustained an injury to her head, had a small laceration that required suturing. And I don't know how we got the suture material. Wait,
let's back up. Where did this injury happen?
I'm not quite sure. May have been after practice, but I'm not sure. And
Okay.
One of our teammates was an ER nurse at the time, rookie, who was a fly half. And she might have had the suture material. We didn't have any local anesthesia, so we had to use alcoholic beverages and something to bite on. And Chris McFerrin was also on the team, and she's a radiologist. So I believed I supervised the suturing.
The triage.
The triage, yes. And then we made a little donut so that at practice and at games and stuff, we could put it over, leave the hole over the stitches and the foam part around it so that she didn't break it open again, because nobody wanted to admit that they were injured or couldn't play.
Right, sure, of course. Now, the team was invited to the White House after your victory. Were you part of that celebration? And if you were, tell us what you remember from that experience.
Yeah, I almost was not a part of that celebration because I had to work that day. It was a weekday. And I had asked a couple of days before if I could be off because I wanted to go to this event. And the initial response was no, we were too busy, can't afford you to be off. So I packed my number ones in a bag in the back, put them in my trunk of my car. I went to work at around 8:30, 8 o'clock. One of my partners said, you know what? I really think you should go to that. I think it's a great opportunity. And how can we tell you no? We'll all just cover for you. So I was like, great. So I jumped in the car, raced down to Washington, which is usually about a 3-hour drive. I pulled into some parking garage somewhere near the White House and changed in the backseat of my car into my number ones and ran into the White House. I don't even remember. I remember going through security and telling them I was part of the team. And one of the things I remember most was what a great sport Barbara Bush was. She was just so engaging, and she was talked to each one of us. And I remember when we went up, we each went to go shake her hand individually. And she said to me, "What did your father say when you told him you were playing rugby?" And my jaw dropped. And I said to her, "How do you know my dad?" Because it just sounded like something that my father would say, like, "Oh, Christ, Maryanne, I can't believe you're playing that sport." But then the security guys rushed me along. And then afterwards, we went to a place called the Ebbett Room and had a few beers. I had to leave early, of course, because I had to get back to Philly to work the next day. But it was really pretty neat to meet the First Lady and just to see what a wonderful person she was and just how open and welcoming and what a great sport. She had a great sense of humor.
That's great. Now, you're also part of the Eagles at the 94, 98 Rugby World Cups as well. What are a couple of memories from those World Cups that come to mind?
Well, 94, we were in Scotland, and I just remember we were playing England in the finals, and all the Scots would come up to us and say, "Beat the bloody hell out of the English," because they all hated the English so much. And they were just so welcoming and just great fans of ours. We had to have breakfast together every day as a team, and we had these T-shirts that said USA Rugby on them. And a lot, I always spill stuff when I eat, so this big spot of jelly on the shirt. And then I found out later into the tournament we had to wear them to every event. I could not get the stain out of my shirt. And our little scrum half, Kerry Kelly, who was from Bash out in San Francisco, every morning she would order breakfast, and everyone at the table would get served except for her. And she would just get so angry she had to go chase this waiter. And the waiter was so funny, like he just acted like he didn't care, and he just had not a care in the world, would always walk off, and she'd always be chasing him down to get her breakfast. And our practices were usually shortly after we ate, every time after we had a meal. And we did a lot of running on the field out by the Braid Burn, which was the river next to the hotel, where the field was slanted, and we were always running on our side. So that was kind of tough. And when we went to the finals, what I most remember, which was kind of frightening, was they had this big archway that was blown up, and it had a clown's head on the top, and terrified of clowns. So that was kind of horrifying. And the 98 World Cup was a totally different, it was kind of a different atmosphere. We had gone to Australia on tour in 97, the summer before that. And our coach really worked us very hard at that tour. And I sort of felt like he was trying to see who was going to be hard enough to take it and who wasn't. And when we got to the 98 World Cup in Amsterdam, I was kind of expecting, all of us were expecting the same kind of practice, like practice twice a day, really hard workouts. But he actually really we had one practice a day, and it was really pretty normal. And we were just sort of surprised. We did have some time for relaxation and downtime, and I think we performed really well. Before we went there, we all had to meet in Palo Alto because Frank was working at Stanford at the time, and we would have practices at 6 a.m. out there. So that was a little tough. But it was just a really great experience. And I had to be drug tested after the final. And the girls that were doing the drug testing said they always hate to get the tight head prop and the open side flanker because they always are the most dehydrated. And the Kiwis came in, they had won the tournament, and they started drinking beer right away. And of course, they went to the bathroom right away. And I said, well, I'm going to, just hydrate really well, and I'll just keep drinking water and water. Well, I drank like 12 or 14 bottles of water, and I did not go to the bathroom. And I was there for like 2 hours, and they were getting upset because we had to, they were missing the after party function. So finally I took a sip of beer, and then I went to the bathroom. But it was, when I got into the car to go to the party with the administrators, I got into the back seat and I was wedged between them, and I said, I have to go to the bathroom. They didn't think it was very funny. I thought it was hysterical, but they were a little bit peeved, I think.
M.A., was there a proper hooker you faced on a regular basis that you enjoyed playing against?
Well, here on the East Coast in the Mid-Atlantic area, we had a lot of good teams around us. So I have a friend, her nickname is Blotto, Chris Casatelli. She played for Nova. I always enjoyed playing against her because we'd have a lot of fun with each other, like, sort of egg each other on a little bit. And when we played together, we actually had a lot of fun too. And then I also enjoyed playing against Annie Flavin for Beantown, but I didn't get to play against her as much. But those were my two favorite props to play against.
You played in 3 World Cup finals. Who was the toughest team you ever faced?
Oh, in the World Cup?
And it doesn't matter, any team.
Well, the toughest team, as I said, in our area, we had really competitive teams like Washington Furies, Maryland Stingers were always good, and Nova was really good. Then later, Monmouth was pretty tough, and New York team. But in the Beantown was the toughest team club side that we ever played. But in the World Cup, I think the toughest team that I ever faced was New Zealand.
In that 98 final?
Yeah, and then we actually played them in 96 as well at the Canada Cup in Edmonton. We played them 91 in the semifinal at the World Cup, and they didn't go to 94, so we didn't know what to expect from them. And then we saw them at the Canada Cup in 96, and man, they were just unstoppable. And then in 98, they were really good too. They were just really good.
You mentioned a couple of players, but who are two or three of your teammates that you really enjoyed playing with, and why?
Well, I always loved my Philly teammates. They were always showed up for the game. They're always tough and always gave it everything. One of my favorite players, I have to say, is my friend Leslie Mason, who used to play inside center, but then wised up and moved into the front row. And she just always came and gave 110%. She would not back down from any kind of confrontation. She just always was there 110%, as well as my inside center, Lisa Huff, who played at Dartmouth, and she played with New York for a little bit and then came to play with us while she was in law school. She always brought her A game with her and never gave up. She was sometimes a little hard on herself, but she never backed down the game. She always gave it 110%. One of my other favorite teammates, I have to say, is a woman named Marnie Miller, who came from the Midwest and just always kind of calmed everything down and always made us laugh. Even during a really intense game, she'd have something to say that would just take the edge off of things. So I always appreciated that.
You gave back to the sport after your playing days were done by coaching the Philadelphia Women's RFC, Marfu, and eventually with the U.S. Women's National Team. Did you know during your playing days that you'd like to coach? And what did you enjoy most about your coaching experience?
Well, it's kind of weird, but I never really thought about coaching because I always thought I would just play forever. And you realize maybe that's not so wise. I was lucky to be in the EPRU. I don't know if you remember Dana Bateman.
Sure.
She used to organize for our little local area union some really great coaching clinics. We got to meet people like Ian Kirkpatrick from South Africa, Wayne Smith from New Zealand, George Hook from Ireland. They did coaching clinics for us, and I felt like I always learned a lot from them. So when I started coaching, I tried to take a little bit of stuff I learned from everybody and integrate that. And the best part I liked about coaching was I didn't offer myself. Someone came and solicited me to coach, and I said, okay, I'll come out and try it. I don't know if I'll be any good, but I found I really enjoyed it. And what I enjoyed most was seeing players learn stuff and seeing them finally, the light goes on and they get what you're trying to say. And then when they performed really well, it was just awesome to be part of that whole experience for them.
And of all your rugby memories, is there one that stands above the rest?
Oh, geez. I know, I've been thinking about that. All of my World Cup finals and all the teams I've been with have always been a lot of my favorite memories. And I remember early on in my career, just sort of popped into my head the other day. I think it had to be like in 1980. I was in medical school still. And our little EPRU had a select side. We were all dressed in red. We looked like a bunch of little apples. And we played the New England select side at Burholm Park, which is where the Blackthorn rugby team always played. And there were a couple of old Welsh guys that came and watched the match. And, we really got our butts handed to us that day. I don't think we scored at all, but we just kept working and working. And then these two little Welshmen walked up to me after the game, and I was playing hooker at the time, and they told me that they thought that I was the best player on the field. And I was like, what game were you watching? Because I felt like I was just getting run over and trampled on. But to have a compliment like that come from people that love rugby and know rugby, and even though you're on a losing side, that sort of made my day.
Sure. Now, of all your tours, Eagles or otherwise, what was your favorite tour you've been on?
It's hard to pick a favorite, but I have to say that the first tour I ever went on out of the country was my friend Blotto, who played for Nova, invited me on a team, was at Boston women's team in the spring of '89, I believe it was. And we went to New Zealand. And it was the first time I had been to New Zealand. And I just felt like this is where, rugby is God here. And someone took a picture of me on the field before the match, and there was like 2 rainbows behind me. And one of my partners at work said, "You look like you're crying. You're going to cry there." And I said, I was just in awe because I was on this blessed hallowed ground of rugby here in New Zealand. And the first match we played was against Otahu, and we played at the Otahu clubhouse. The men were playing Ponsonby, so it was a really big league match for them. And they went and played on a lesser field and let the women play on their main stadium. And I just thought that was like really awesome that they let us do that. And the field, they didn't really have bleachers. It was sort of like we're in a hollow, and the ground like rolled up so that there were sort of like natural seats for people to sit on.
Sure.
And there was a team that we stayed with. They were called Manukau. And we became very friendly with that team, and they followed us everywhere, went to all of our matches and cheered for us and let us go to their marae. And they had a hangi for us where they cooked the food underground, and it was a really special time. So it was a lot of good memories from that.
Sounds like it. Now, looking back on your career, Emma, what are you most proud of?
I feel like I'm going to cry. I guess it has to be this, like being interviewed by you, and being inducted into the Hall of Fame and picked by, my cohorts and other players for this great honor. I just, still can't even believe it. It's pretty amazing.
Now, you achieved similar success off the pitch as you remained in the medical field for almost 4 decades now, including life-saving work with the sickest COVID patients over the course of the past couple of years. First of all, thank you for what you do. And secondly, how difficult has it been for a frontline worker these past couple of years?
Well, I was just talking with some of my partners about this the other day, because when we first went into lockdown, it was just the uncertainty. It was so scary, and not knowing what's going to happen, and driving to work every day. There was nobody on the street. It just was so surreal. And everybody sort of said, like, they would think to themselves, is this the day that I might get this disease? Is this the day that I might get sick and I might die? And my one partner, she said she went so far as to write a goodbye letter to her children, just explaining who she was and what she did in case she got sick. And then there's the worry of bringing this disease home to your family and to your kids or your loved ones. We did have these, they were called PAPRs. They're these hoods that you put on, and it has a respirator in it, and it's supposed to protect you, and you had to wear gowns and gloves. The hardest part was seeing these people struggle to breathe, and then you're wearing this thing to go in to put the breathing tube in, and they can't hear you when you try to talk to them to comfort them because of the hood and all the stuff you have on. And you just see the fear and the terror in their eyes was just horrible. There are so many people passed away from this that outside the hospital, they had refrigerated trucks because the morgues couldn't handle all the bodies. And so we'd have to walk past it every day. It's like, oh my God, look at, it's such a reminder. And the people I really felt very sorry for were the nurses that were in the ICU, because they did the day-to-day care for these patients. And they would have to communicate to the families, because families couldn't come visit. And they would be in there with them every day. And then they'd have to reposition the patients, because a lot of times we turned them onto their stomach because it was better for their breathing. And I think they got really close to a lot of the patients. And then when they didn't do well, it was just hard for them. And to be honest, they have not really had a break at all with all this stuff. So
Wow, that's tough. Now, I mean, in recognition of your accomplishments both on and off the pitch, the Washington Athletic Club has named the award for the top women's collegiate rugby player, the Maryanne Sorensen Collegiate Player of the Year Award. How cool has that been for you?
Oh, that's been really cool. And, because of the way I am, I sort of really have to pinch myself all the time because I don't really think I deserve it. I love going to Washington, though, Seattle. The people are so awesome. Everybody is so nice. And Wayne Milner and the Washington Athletic Club just do such a great event that I hope that I can go every year. And to see the kids that have won the award, and then they all go on and do even more stuff, and they're really succeeding in their continued rugby play. It's been really, really great to watch. And then I got to go to a couple of the Seawolves matches, which I know the last one, they beat, was it San Diego they beat, right? Yeah. So it's just been a great experience all around. And I have to thank Alex Goff and Wayne Milner for that, coming up with that idea. So it's really been, I'm just humbled by it all.
Yeah, and I was humbled when Wayne asked me to introduce you at this year's event.
Yeah, that was a surprise. I
just had so much fun. That was a lot of fun. I really
I hope you come again. I couldn't believe that when you showed up, but I thought, well, maybe you were the guest speaker, and I had no idea that they had planned all this stuff.
No, that was fun. And you're funny. I didn't know how funny you were, but that was a lot of fun.
Everybody, actually, it's kind of funny because one of the younger guys at work, one of my younger colleagues, told somebody that I was his favorite anesthesiologist because he thinks I'm really funny. And I'm like, why? I don't think I'm funny, but
you are. Now, you touched on it a little bit, and we had our Hall of Fame induction ceremony a couple of weeks ago. Tell us again what it means to be inducted in the Hall of Fame.
It's just such an honor for me because ever since I first started playing, rugby has always been my love. And I remember when the Philly women, we were having a hard time getting people out to practice. And my coach at the time, Michael Stark, he was coaching Philly women, and he said, because I would be so frustrated, like, why did these people not love rugby? Why do they not want to stay and play? He said, well, Emma, he said, you treat rugby as a love and they treat it just as a game. And to be a recipient of this acknowledgement for something that I love so much just means the world to me.
Well, you fully deserved it. And thank you for all you've done for rugby on the field, coaching, playing, and also what you've done off the field. I mean, that's tremendous work you've done. And I think I can speak for all the rugby family. Thank you very much for all you've done.
Oh, thanks, Brian.
And thank you for spending time with us today. And folks, that's going to do it for another edition of our With You podcast. For more information about the U.S. Rugby Foundation, go to our homepage at usrugbyfoundation.org. Until next time, stay safe, everyone.